Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson in for Cody Thomas. Thanks for being with us. We are tracking a lot of trials here at Court TV on this busy Friday. In the state of Texas, it's day 2 of testimony in the Carmelo Anthony case. He's on trial for the deadly stabbing of another student, Austin Metcalf. It took place last year at a track meet. We'll have updates throughout the day and throughout the hour with Cody Thomas. In Wisconsin, testimony resumes in the state's case in chief, where Zachariah Rosh faces life in prison if convicted for the murder of his estranged wife, Crystal, who was also a mother of 5. And Karen Reed back in the headlines today with an exclusive interview on the Today Show. What she had to say, we'll share it with you later this hour. But first, let's begin in Texas with the Carmelo Anthony trial playing out there. Prosecution has been calling a barrage of student witnesses to the stand, including witnesses describing the incident at question at the track meet between Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. Another student under the tent said this: Austin was asking who you are. Even I was asking who this guy was. Austin said, quote, "I'm not going to fight you at the track meet, dude." Then Austin got close up on him and Carmelo stabbed him. He had his hand in his bag and kept saying, "Touch me, touch me." Then I ran. And then went on to testify saying this: Austin was like, "Just leave. I just wanted you to leave." Then Austin walked up and just touched him on the shoulder and Carmelo stabbed him. As the trial continues on day 2, a lot of tensions outside that courthouse. Just a few moments ago, outside the courthouse in Texas, this was the scene. A lot of shouting and a lot of angry people. A lot of tensions at that courthouse there in Texas. Let's do this. Let's bring in my guest for the hour, a friend of the program, criminal defense attorney Silva. Megerditchian, nice to see you on this Friday. Overall, what are your thoughts about this case? We're seeing the barricades up in front of the courthouse, no cameras inside the courtroom, and then you have people with signs, people that obviously have opposite opinions about this case. What are your thoughts?
Oh, Matt, first of all, always a pleasure, and you look incredible, my friend, and happy Friday. Look, this is such an agonizing story, especially because it's children. At the end of the day, these are 2 young boys, and tempers flared, and we don't know exactly what happened, but we do know it's tragic. And then you add that race component, you add a jury that is an all-white jury. It's just going to fuel these tempers, this us against them mentality, which is so unfortunate in criminal cases. Usually there's so much decorum, ironically, right, that we see in criminal. But the tempers and the children, and it was so unnecessary that this even happened. Matt, I don't know. I wish there were cameras in that court, just so we could see the process, just so the public process, to show that there are 2 sides to every story, to see, mature argument. I think we're being cheated by not having the cameras in the courtroom. And all that we're seeing are increased tempers, increased implicit issues. I just wish, again, there was more transparency for a case like this.
I do too, especially covering high-profile cases across the country for Court TV, and some that were very controversial. I find the light being brought into the courtroom with the cameras really helps the community, because this is also a community that's going to have to heal no matter what the outcome is from these proceedings.
Absolutely, Matt. And transparency equates process. And what I mean by that is when people actually see the process of a criminal trial, when they see how a prosecutor argues and how the defense responds, and the amount of evidence and how witnesses testify, it's not just a witness saying, oh, he wasn't afraid or he came inside the tent. It has to be judging how the person testifies. And I think it allows a trial to make sense to the public. So rather than a public thinking this is an unfair justice system, they can see that both sides were equally heard. And regardless of what that jury is comprised of, if the public could see that the jury got the case and rendered their decision properly, these tensions, I really do believe, would subside. Now, we do have other experiences, right? We know with the Karen Reed trial, we know back in the day, the OJ trial, transparency did not lessen the passion that people felt. But I always say when there are young people involved in the process, and this seems so unbelievably unnecessary, I do think transparency is the way to go here. It's just so unfortunate and so unnecessary from start to finish that you just want the community to heal and for young people to realize every action has a consequence and to think before they act. It's absolutely essential.
It's just tragic all the way around. Do you feel that this is one of those cases where we should have had a sequestered jury?
Matt, yeah, I always feel bad for jurors because of what they have to go through in the process. But it's important that they feel not only safe and free from criticism and free from judgment, but we're humans and there's always a temptation to see what's going on around us. And you just don't want the jury to be impassioned by the fury, by the news articles, by the countless social media posts about this case. You want them to stay as neutral as humanly possible. But again, sequestering is so hard on individuals. And as attorneys, sometimes we really do prefer it. But you also want a jury that rests and is able to be with their family and always have their common sense. But you cannot escape this media frenzy and these passions. So you wonder if sequestering would have been the better choice.
Yeah, I think that, maybe a combination thereof, Silva, as I'm talking with you, maybe it should have looked like cameras in the courtroom, but a sequestered jury. I'm not sure the duration of this trial, what we're going to see, but it seems to be fast moving. Already, the state of Texas, in their case in chief, calling a lot of critical witnesses and eyewitnesses, and they're bringing a lot of emotion to the courtroom. What do you make of just the way that the state of Texas has been calling witnesses and laying out their case thus far? So far, we're hearing from a lot of these eyewitnesses that are describing the incident at question in the tent, talking about tent culture. They're also talking about the fact that, the victim in all of this was asked to leave, and they witnessed the stabbing with a knife. So
it's imperative. I think they're doing what they have to do. On the back of the prosecutor's mind, they need to show that this wasn't self-defense, right? So the witness testimony is imperative. The nudge. One of the witnesses, the young witnesses said, Austin, with one hand, nudged. And that's really important to show that there was no threat being made. But again, it's a reasonable person's interpretation of what that threat is. It's still an initial touching, right? There was a touch made. And that's actually really important to see Carmelo's state of mind. So all of this is going to be really the way the prosecutors are doing it is a smart way to put forward their case. At the end of the day, Matt, I do think the witness testimony is going to be of the utmost importance. And also, if Carmelo testifies, what he was feeling at that time, or witnesses on his account saying, he felt threatened, anything like that to counter the prosecution's point that this nudge was just a simple nudge.
Yeah, so many questions about that, and we'll talk about what the case moving forward looks like, you and I together, over the next 2 hours. and
Yeah.
you know, what the defense could look like if he takes the stand. It's a self-defense defense. He may have to, but then he's also going to have to explain, you know, why he felt that he was in danger, and, you know, if it was premeditated, why he brought a knife on campus in the first place, if there was another purpose for that. All right, Silva, we're going to end the conversation there, but we'll check in with you later. Well, let's all do this. Let's head to Wisconsin now for more of the state's case in the Zachariah Rosh case, where an anthropologist is still on the stand. He's testifying about the bones and a tooth that was found at the crime scene.
Fracture margins. And so those fractures may have occurred because of exposure to fire. On the lower cervical vertebra, some of that has kind of lighter margins and could be taphonomic in origin, or so it's happened post-mortem.
Page 17 of Exhibit 401. What are we looking at here?
These are two fragments of a thoracic vertebra, so the vertebrae that make up the part of your chest where your ribs are. And so the very top is a piece of a thoracic vertebra that's known as a transverse process. It's the actual part of the vertebra that reaches out and makes a connection with the rib. And so it is charred, especially on its medial side. And so but the breaks appear perimortem. They could be due to exposure to fire. And then at the very bottom is a fragment, again, of a thoracic vertebra. It's what's known as the lamina and the inferior articular facet, so part of it that makes a connection to the vertebra that's underneath it. And it's also completely charred, including on the fracture margin, so likely broke as a result of exposure to fire.
And again, conclusively human, these bones.
All of them, yep.
Going on to page 19 of Exhibit 401, what are we looking at here?
So here are three different ribs that were recovered. This one's the left second rib, and it actually retains just a little bit of costal cartilage, which is cartilage that would make connection onto the sternum. It is not thermally altered. Then down on figure 55 is a left rib, I believe, and that is another left. Yeah, it's a left rib, and so it's almost completely preserved, but has fractures along the anterior, or kind of towards the front of the chest and posterior parts, with just a little bit of charring towards the posterior end. And then the last one's another rib fragment that also has charring along some of its fractured surfaces, and so likely fractured through exposure to fire.
Now again, these bones were not marked with those crime lab numbers, so we can't match up sort of photo to photo like we did before, but some of the bones are so distinct that it is, we can match up some of them. So I'm going to show you Exhibit 219. And tell me, are any of the bones shown on that page displayed in Exhibit 219?
They are.
And just which bone is that we can see on 219?
You can see the manubrium. You can see a couple of the rib fragments as well.
And the manubrium we talked about earlier, correct?
Yep, it's the very top of the sternum.
And this is from, according to the marker here from the sheriff's office, this would have been located on the 24th, correct?
Correct. In fact, I think that's right next to or even part of the hole of that had been disturbed by the carnivores.
And I'll just show the jury Exhibit 219. And we talked about all the figures on this page, correct?
Correct.
Now going on to page on page 20, what are we looking at here?
This is a small rib fragment. It's so small it's now possible to estimate or assess what side of the thorax it comes from. But it does have a fracture that is charred. on one side.
So going back to the ribs that we saw here on page 19, so we have a fracture. Tell me again, there's a fracture that was caused
by fire in the circle, you can see. And then you've got other fractures that are potentially caused by some carnivores. And then others that are likely to be perimortem based on their jagged edges and the fact that they have colored bone that is consistent with surrounding cortical bone.
So is it likely that these bones were in the fire at some point before they were buried?
You can only say that for the charred rib.
The charred rib.
Yep.
The other bones, we can't say that. Can't say that, but at least the one on the very bottom, Exhibit 57.
Correct.
Okay. Going on to 20. We talked about that already, correct?
Correct.
Now going on to page 22 of Exhibit 401. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so this is a tibia. It is a left tibia. But it's been really substantially altered by scavenging, or I should say gnawing rodents. And so if you look, it's a little hard to see, but right here, there's a whole bunch of parallel striations along this bone. So like right here, you can see those parallel striations. Right here, you can see the parallel striations. Those are caused by rodents. Rodents have continuously growing central incisors, and so they look for hard things to gnaw on to wear those central incisors down. And so they will oftentimes take bone and use it to kind of wear down those incisors. And so rodents had really substantially altered this bone fragment through the process of gnawing all over it, to the point where it's altered the overall kind of shape of the bone.
And just for the record, where you were pointing at was the middle of the middle of figure 61 on page 22 of Exhibit 401, yep. And then on the outside left edge, correct?
Correct.
And then anything else contained in Exhibit 63, 64, 65, and 66 that is significant?
Yeah, on 63 and 64, there's striations along this bone and basically a straight cut that are indicative of cut by a saw.
And were we ever able to conclusively match that up to any type of saw?
Not that I'm aware of, but the one thing I would add is that this bone has been altered extremely substantially by the rodent gnawing. And so it's not possible to say conclusively that this is human.
So then going on to page 23 of Exhibit 401, what are we looking at here?
It shows a destroyed end from on that one end of the tibia, and then that cut end with the striate.
Going to hit the pause button right there. Coming up, more testimony out of that Wisconsin courtroom. Let us know what you think about this case on social media. This is Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.